Hey, what's up? Welcome. So OBS updated and is acting weird. So we're gonna hopefully find a fix for this. Let's see if I can find a fix. It's been a while. Glad to be here. All right, so. Activate next to filters. Start the virtual camera under the control section. How are you guys? Shivam, hello. Welcome in. Just getting settled, so we'll let some people join in. Probably put on some music. I got a feature in mind today. Is my TPM working? What's up, PR? So TPM's a little tricky. You might want to check the directory. Where are you installing TPM? Sometimes that is a gotcha that'll get people. The TPM instructions are pretty clear, so it's hard to know for sure what it might be without getting more information. But I know that I tend to help a lot of people on my Discord server, so feel free to go there. All right, let's do this. Let's code some things. All right. So I guess I'm not going to get away with my OBS is not playing nice today. Restart OBS. Ensure the virtual camera is activated next to the filters option. All right, so do we know how to do that? Filters option. No sources selected. All right, let's try that. I overhauled my OBS recently, so I've got lots of cool new features, but I don't think I can show them off today. Weird. Okay, well, it is what it is. All right. Let's get into it. So I'm going to have to do my good old screen sharing, present, screen share. So we'll mess with this today. And just for fun, we can use this. So startup scripts should be fairly straightforward. So we'll just kind of get to it, and I'll probably zoom in a bit here so you guys can see. And you can see all the screen now. All right, so let's see. Let's go ahead and set this. Boom. Little nested magic. So I do have a few things to clean up. So we're gonna add convert to namer. And then remove unused code. And then feature. All right, so cloner. So what we're going to work on today is a startup. Let's go with that. So let's do startup. And I guess we'll also need I think the connector is what I'm going to base all of this off of. So connector. So I just need to remind myself of how all of this works. It's been a few weeks since I've been on. Let's close that. So we've got startup and connector. Startup package. So type is our connector, and we're basically gonna know startup. We're gonna start up a session, and it'll only run sometimes. So it'll be session. Types session. Is it types? What do I have? Oh, model. Session. So if I remember right, the connector, when we create a connector, we want to run connect. We're going to borrow this pattern. We're just going to do the same thing. So I have strategies. I'm going to have a config strategy, and I'm going to have a default strategy. And that's about it. That's all that this is going to be doing. So we're going to have to pass in options. We're going to have to pass in the sesh session. I think that's it. And so we'll do something similar, which I like how this turned out because it's like 40 lines of code for this whole thing. Interesting. I'll have to play around with some of this code. It's not perfect, but I do want to ship version 2 today. Not today, this month. Happy August. And we will say that this returns something to startup, right? So startup will return, what will the startup return? I guess a string or an error. Should be fine. And then we've got all our, the real startup is a strut, and the strut is gonna pass in config. So we definitely want config. Dir shouldn't matter. Home shouldn't matter. All that really matters is we're going to execute the script if it exists. So we may end up using the shell. Configuration. So in my configuration model, I have git config. I'm just gonna have the configs themselves. So we'll keep it simple. It's gonna be like run thing with shell. I think we're gonna simplify it from the previous version. We'll see how it all plays out. Let me turn on some fans. So we're going to loop through the config. We're going to either find a config that matches the session that was provided, or we're going to fall back on the default if it exists. So let's see how well that works. I guess I'll just do it all in one place. So I have my connector. New startup. I think that's enough. But we're going to take that and we're going to func this thing. I always forget how all this actually plays out. So we've got our S for real startup, and then we're going to run a startup function. I don't know if these are going to conflict. Maybe we could say this is run startup. Or like startup exec, maybe. Like an exec command. We're going to execute the startup. We'll start with that. We'll see how that feels. And then we decided this is the session. Yep. All right. And we're going to return to do a nil. And I'm going to create strategies. The strategies will return. They're not going to return a connection. They're going to return something to run. So basically, we're going to take something like this, strategies, and we're going to say that real startup and the model.sesh session, and then it'll return like a string or an error. And it'll be config strategy and then default. And we're basically going to do something similar to what's here. We're going to loop through strategies. And if it's not nil, this seems wrong. If not nil, if error is not nil, right, we return something like that. And we're just going to say something similar to this. We're going to do a loop. So it'll be like this. If startup, we're going to return a command. So the strategy is going to pass an S and session. And if it's an error, failed to determine startup. Command. And if command, is not equal to this, then we're gonna run command. So that'll be the fun part. My loop is not there. And then else return no. So this will just mean that no command to run. So that's the idea. So we'll just recreate those two strategies. If you guys aren't using sesh already, this is a Tmux plugin, and the way that it works right now is if you start up anything like sesh v2 lister, right? It's got this little folder icon, which means that it's a new session. It's not currently running. It's from my list of records. And so when I choose that, you'll see that it opens up NeoVim automatically. So NeoVim just opens itself. And the way that that works is I have this default session startup command, and we can run nvim go to file. And go to file is just a custom NeoVim command that I wrote that pulls up the file picker for NeoVim. And so the way that it works right now is if it matches to script path or startup command. Let's talk about this Perplexica. So if this is matched, then it'll find the startup command and it'll execute it. Script path is similar, although I think what I need to do is I need to change how this works. Even if a configuration is found and it doesn't match, then it falls back to the default. And so we're looking for a configuration, and we're looking for if there's a startup command. Now, I think I may not do the startup script. Startup command, startup command, startup command. Do I do script still? I do. Okay. So I may decide for version 2.0 that I'm going to drop startup script. The way you would run a script is just run it. Just make the command run the script. Right? It's not that hard. So I think that's the plan, is to drop startup script. So let's just make that strategy. So I'm just going to make the startup strategy. We're going to call this, how did I name them in? Let's be consistent here. All right. So we're going to say config.go package startup. And this ends up looking similar to this. So I'm going to have the config, if I can spell, strategy. All right. And then this is real startup, and then session, session, and then the model. This is going to return a string. All right, so we'll return this, no config found. And we'll do a quick find config. So I've actually done this already in the config strategy. We find the configuration based off of the name. If it exists, we do something. If not, we do something else. So we're going to basically do the same thing. Lister becomes a new lister becomes a new dependency, which means this should just work. And we're gonna take the name and we're gonna do session.name. And if it exists, we're gonna return the config. What's up, Agus? We are writing some code today. I can make this a little bigger. So I don't think I've put in the config session, let's do v2 config. I do need v2 model. So in model config, I do have startup script and startup command here. We're going to call this command for now. Note drop mention breaking change in v2 notes. All right, so that's for me to do. We're going to say startup command. Startup command feels plain enough that it should work. The real question is, this is optional. This is default. It should inherit. So why am I not getting config dot it returns a sesh session, but I want it to return crap. I really want it to return a config session. Or I guess I'm just going to have to config. We're just going to have to add startup command to the sesh session. Do I copy all of it over? Path. Okay, so like startup command would be like that. But I need to go higher up. This is how we list it. We make our key. Where does session come from? Session's already been created. What is this? Okay, this is my session config. Session config, yes. So if the name equals that, boom. I guess I need to first actually change this to include startup command string. Do I put this below? 72 could be 56. Does string go above? Okay. I'm still learning like memory allocation stuff, so I guess the things that are bigger go above and the things that are smaller go below, from what I can tell. So then that's that. That means that startup command should be session.startup command. That's the lister. That's all I need from that and that. Connector startup. All right. So then I should be able to do startup command and startup command does not equal empty string. What's up, Abdul? I am working on a Tmux session manager called Sesh. It looks a little bit like this. So you can have a global pop-up in Tmux. I have it bound to Command K, which is similar to Discord's, command palette. And you can list all active Tmux sessions. So the ones at the top in blue with the blue icon are just Tmux sessions I'm currently running. The cogs below are custom configurations that I've built. So like Tmux config is a really popular one for me. I do that and it opens up my Tmux config in a new session. And then below that, we can have to use the arrow key here. I have Zoxide results. And so Zoxide is just a smart directory tool that like stores which folders you use the most. Actually, hold on. Oh. I got dogs barking. Yeah, so these are Zoxide directories. So these are just folders on your computer that you access a lot. And the more that you use sesh, Zoxide has a built-in tool that will score. You can see here, oh, it's not going to work for me today, but it gives you an arbitrary score. And so that if we can sort by that score. So the more often you use something, as you search for something like main is something I use a lot. New main is a common one. And so you'll see this shows up in order of how I most use it. You know, server, web, core, model, those are common things for me. And so what we're doing is we're rewriting it using dependency injection, which allows for me to pass in toolings like running shell commands, interacting with Tmux, interacting with Zoxide through the code. I can then, as I pass those pieces around using dependency injection, I can more easily test things by running them in isolation. So version 1 of the application is hard to test because I have to do mostly manually testing, which is a pain. And so, yeah, Siobhan's right. It's a Zoxide is a directory jumper. And so V2 of this project is just a better, more testable, more structured, and some of the code's been simplified. Some of the code's been made more programmatic in that I can repeat pieces more easily. This strategy mechanism that I've set up here is one example of that. And so, yeah, we're just going to find a startup command by running different strategies. And then once we have a valid strategy, we'll execute our command. And so it decouples a lot of the traversing logic with the execution logic, which has made it a lot easier for me to work with. So I'm excited to get it to people. Hopefully when they, we do have lots of contributors. We have at least a dozen now. And so as people are able to start contributing again, I'm excited for them to hopefully find this to be more appealing and a little bit simpler to work with. I don't know if it's simpler might be simpler might not be the best term, but it'll be interesting just to see if we can test better. And when bugs come up, I'll be able to add unit tests for those bugs and ensure that my functionality's, as I expect. So we're on our connector. Let's go back to our startup and let's get this working. So if we find a configuration and it exists, then we return the startup command. And then default. How do I name? I use underscore, right? Maybe I'll just do default config. All right. So let's do config, and let's do default config. Don't love that it's like that, but it is what it is. Default config strategy. This one works similarly, except all we need to do is look at the default session config and if it exists. So this one is default config. So we have basically if default config and default config startup command, then default config startup command. Now, is this always going to be? I think we'll get away with this. Yeah, man, always looking for new contributors. Appreciate you using sesh. Glad to see it. And if you want to experiment with a simple feature, because in the future we're going to be able to develop more quickly and have more robust testing, and so it'll be easier for me to ship things with confidence, which is something I really wanted with this redesign. And so, yeah, if you want to with it, I do recommend go to the GitHub issues, find something you find interesting, comment on that issue and say, hey, this is really cool, I want to do this. And then I can sort of assign work rather than people just sort of blindly doing work and then not, sometimes I don't even merge things depending on if they don't align with what I want the project to be. So make sure to reach out and communicate with me before, but I always love seeing more contributors. And Shivam, I do think Go is super readable. It's really simple, but I like it a lot. And Agus, you'll have to say more. So I know comp is, I don't know if you're returning to like neovim conf. Oh, did I do this wrong? If exists, that's going to bite me, isn't it? If exists and startup command, then return. Yes. And then on this one, if does not equal that. For the default config, maybe you mean CMD command? Command might work. Comp. Is it a built-in thing? Go comp, package for comparing Go values and tests. I'm not using this, but I'm using Testify, which has lots of helpful assertion values and things. Plus, Go's standard library has assertions, so I'll give it a star though. Google made it, cool. Yeah, I'm sure this could be useful. If someone proposes it in a future contribution, I'm always down to add things that add value, right? I don't want to just add packages if other packages are already doing something similar. I do think, Shivam, that's a great idea. I'm not really feature parity, I'm not there yet. I don't have all the features that are currently missing from version 1. And so that is where I'm at. When I get to that point, I think I will probably do a beta release and ask people to test it because I have lots of community members that are active. And feel free to join the Discord. If you're not, I have a Discord server from my website, joshbadesky.com. There's a little Discord button at the top. We talk about all the stuff here, all the Tmux plugins that I develop and some of the other stuff that I do, and some of that pre-release stuff will definitely be talked about there. So if you want to be kind of engaged in conversation, go check that out. Okay, so this one's super easy. That was really easy. That was like 4 lines of code. So the trick now, I'm going to go down a little bit. Some middle ground here. Okay. So we will just say config strategy, default config strategy. All right. So these always run in order. So top down, it'll go through the config strategy. If it's not there, it'll go through the default config strategy. And if it's not there, then we know that it's going to skip. This is missing a return. I guess I'm going to just do this at the bottom. We need proper typing. So now we need to do some sort of run command here. I can drop it in if you don't want to go to joshbadesky.com and click on this. Copy link address. There you go. Comp is built in. That makes sense, I guess, since it's made by Google. So it's a standard library thing. All right, here we go. We're almost there. We're actually almost done with this whole feature, which 30 minutes I'll take. There's more to do, so don't worry. We'll keep streaming. we'll keep making stuff. I want to run the command. So I have a shell library, and the shell library lets me not exec. It lets me run a command. Hey, what's up? Look at that. We got people joining. Love it. Thanks for joining. Probably shell. Yeah, let's do real shell. All right, so if I go back to sesh main, is it the connect command? I always forget where this is one of the things that also drove me crazy, is that all our logic was sort of all over the place. I think it's in the Tmux command. So in the Tmux connect command, we do this if, else, do, else thing, do thing, right? And so it gets a little bit crazy. So execing our startup means we want to run a persistent command, which means we want to send keys to the session. So that means we probably could just set up a Tmux dependency and do send keys. So let's do that. Tmux. And we will send keys. There's a lot here. So what are we going to need? We're going to need the session. So the name is a string, and the command is a string, and we'll return that. Yes. And this will it build? This is dependency injection in action, just to let you guys know. We were talking about dependency injection. This is why it's awesome. So I'm going to do send keys and send keys. Oh, I already have send keys. Did I already do send keys and missed it? Or did I not expose it? Look at that. We already have it. So Tmux will take send keys -t target pane command, which are the keys. Yes. All right. So now I guess I already did it. We borrowed it from the last time we worked on this. Let's sort send keys. So now in our startup logic, we're going to say that we are listing, because we're listing config. We actually need the model. Config model, that's not right. I don't think I've used this yet. Lister. We want lister. Did I do that right? Oh. Lister goes there, and then we know we need Tmux. So Tmux. So now that's our dependency injected. We have the startup package will want Tmux. We don't need to actually send Tmux when we match to things. We just need to say, if I run this and I compare it to this, session name, then I want it to match. So this is the easy part. It's all in here already. We just say return s.tmux.sendKeys, and we'll take the session name and the command. So we'll never get to this. We never get to this if ran. I want to turn formatted string, something like that. Cannot use format string. It doesn't matter, does it? My connector, I do something similar. Actually, I don't think it's worth. Check this out, though. I can do a little debug, and I can ask it to fix my error for me. Sprint F, yeah, figured. So, all right. The link on the website's expired. It shouldn't be. I'm just now seeing that. I do not know. It's the same. It's the same link that I sent. All right, well, let's just test this now. So we want to make sure that this works. We know that there are two main ways that this is going to happen. We're going to build sesh dev. So what I find is that if I do connect Tmux config, it should create the session, and it switches. Oh, hold on. Let's try that again. Switching to. So I need to inject the configuration strategy in. Right? Would that make sense, chat? What do you think? I can't actually run the startup command unless I hook it into the logic. So basically, if it's new, we're going to create the new session. And now our connector has this new startup script. So we're going to do startup.startup. This is where it gets fun. More dependencies. So let's just sort this by name. Yep. And then this goes after Tmux startup. And it goes after startup. All right. So we have our new dependency. And in our connection, if it's new, we're going to take startup and we're going to exec the connection.session.name. What did it want? Oh, it wanted the whole session. I guess this is going to be valid. I don't know if it's necessary. Yeah, it is necessary. Okay, so that's that. Let's see. Nothing. Okay. Switching to Tmux session. All right, so that's correct. It would have been new. This is where I would love to be able to run commands and use the debugging tool to step through code. I haven't figured that out yet. Once I do figure it out, I think it'll be fun to let people interact with, debuggers inside NeoVim. Like, that's a tricky thing that not everybody's figured out yet, and I'm not great at yet either. Okay, so it would have created the new session. It should have started up the script. it would have taken the session name, right? Our startup, it would have taken the session name, found the valid thing, and send the keys. So basically we want to say executing startup command and the command. But I would have expected, well, I guess if I didn't actually find any lines here, I could take this and actually print it somewhere. All right. So there's our build. All right. Default config, sconfig undefined. Type real startup, no field or method. All right. Right. We thought we weren't using it, but we are. There's this, right? Config. Cannot use lister, model config value struct literal. No, I don't want the model.config. I want config. How does this end up? The real question is, I just need to remember, it's been a minute since I've done this. We connect with connection options. On the config strategy, we use lister. So I use invimdap. Invimdap setup, it's great for unit tests. For unit tests, it works. No problem. Maybe I just need to write a unit test. But what I want to do is I want to actually execute the CLI command, the built binary thing, right? Run it. I guess I'm just trying to execute it, have it actually interact with Tmux, and then interact with the code as it goes through it. But I guess a unit test would be better, right? I probably should add a connection type unit test that says when I connect and the session has a default script, I expect the default script to be run. And I can do that sort of assertion. So that's probably the best way to test this anyway. But I said I was almost done. Doesn't look like I'm almost done. I think I got some more to do here. So we find the config, but there's a default session. Default session shows up how so far? Do I even use it? Let's see if I use it anywhere in the project. Default session. Default config. That's me. Switch or attach. This is on some, yeah, that's different defaults. I don't think I'm using it yet. So let's go through the CLI. v2 sesh CLI. So when I run connect, what happens here is I actually call connect. Where is it? Is it further up? We take the name, we pass it to the connect command. I guess so far, I'm doing options from here. Options comes from the CLI options, but there isn't, I'm not using the configuration yet. When does that show up? I might have to rethink this and move some code around. So in the sesh CLI, we're going to have to add our new, we might as well do that now. Wrapper dependencies, resource dependency, here we go. Here we go. So we're going to add a new one called startup. Startup. And connector. Where's config? So config shows up here. And it shows up as configurator. And we do pass it in. Connector only takes connector. It doesn't take configurator. So the decision now to make, well, I don't need to pass configurator. It is model.config that can be passed in. So this is right. So then why did it not work? Config is model config. Oh, probably because the order was wrong. So config is already passed. Looks like these are in different order. All right. All right. Does this go last? All right. I want to try to optimize for memory when I can. So the config option is, it's a model because somewhere else I'm already doing the logic at the highest level where I get the config. So the config is gotten and then passed in as dependency. That's kind of the way that I like to think about it. And it makes it simple. So every time you run a command, config is fetched from a TOML file and passed in as a dependency, always, in any command. I think in some cases, I could optimize it where if we don't use config, we don't want to call it. And I can figure that out maybe, but at this point, I found that it's pretty fast. So it's not a crazy cost at this point. All right, so now we're back on track. So we have our config, it's being passed in. We have our default config, which comes from here. Yep. So now that all of this, I don't need this. This is kind of redundant. And then I don't need that either. So that's startup. Our connector has our strategies. All right, let's try all this. We'll go back to V2. We'll build it. What do we got? Sesh CLI. Sesh CLI, okay. Doesn't have enough arguments because we added on connector, we added startup after namer. No more errors, cool. Let's close this. There we go. So now this is the actual valid version. So do I need to close this? I probably do. All right. Hey, something happened. Oh, it didn't hit enter. So do we just need to always, Tmux, do we need to always hit enter on send keys? Enter. right? Is that what we did here in here? Enter. All right. I'll take it. So, hey, let's make sure that that was not a fluke. Hey, look at that, chat. Feature complete. All right, so that's a built-in command. Now, if I was to do something else, like, I don't know, Josh Radesky. Nope, that one has a. Let's just do a good old sesh list FCF. Let's do. Which of these doesn't have a command? Main Tmux. No connection found? That's not right. I have Zoxide fallback, so... Oh, it's doing double quotes. Boom! Default. Let's go. That's our default command. That's awesome. Okay. See, executing startup command and then go to file. Yeah. So that's it. I don't want to print lines anymore. So let's make sure that we connector connect. Let's not print. Is that it? I think so. Let's go. That's right. Let's go. We got balloons too. We got confetti. We got confetti everywhere. So that's the feature. I think as of today, I would be happy to release beta users. The icons, the fancy colored icons here aren't set up. So yeah, you see this is version 1.0 and this is version 2.0. So the icons aren't set up yet, but I really was not a fan of how they were before. And my plan is to let you add your own emoji or icon, NerdFont icon, to each record individually. So if you add configurations, which you can add custom configurations, instead of all of them being cogs, what I want to do is let them be whatever icon you want. And so it should make it a lot more playful and fun and easier to interact with. I did this home. See how home has an icon after it here. One of the things I found is that sesh on Raycast sometimes doesn't want to render custom icons like that because it's a whole font problem, right? Because Raycast is a fixed font. You can't change the font of Raycast. I've asked them about it already. And so that's sort of been something that I have been working around. But once I do this piece, then it should be great, the custom icon thing. And people were having issues with rendering colors and things like that. So I think that there'll be more opportunities to make that better when we ship it. All right, so let's go build. Let's sesh dev connect main tmux, and then executing. All right, so we're gonna executing startup. Let's get rid of those. So what I'll do in the near future, Andres isn't here. So I have a regular guy. His name's Andres. He's here a lot. He's part of the community. He gave me some feedback on how we could add logging. So I'm going to add logging to this at some point in the near future so that when people have problems or bugs, I can go, hey, set debug level, set a certain level, like info level, debug level. You can change the log level when you run a command. And then when you go to execute it, we can very clearly get a stack trace of what pieces of the code ran and what pieces failed, more importantly. And then you can copy and paste that logic or the logs. You can just copy and paste it into a GitHub issue. and we should have a lot more clarity on how to fix certain bugs. All right, so you're asking, make the current icons default that can then be disabled in the configs. Yeah, you should be able to overwrite those icons as well. So what I'm doing now is I'm doing like string matching, like literally string matching. Like when I see this specific Unicode character, then strip it out and do the connection logic. It's super messy. I don't like that way at all. So what we'll do is we'll have a presentation layer on the CLI side where we'll add icons via a flag, and then they'll probably be like the connection string probably will require a new icon flag that says, hey, I expect an icon to be here. And so then we'll do a cross match and we'll say, hey, this thing should have this icon, and do a perfect string match on that, and then strip it out and run the appropriate command. So that's sort of the idea. If I was to not do FCF and I was to integrate fuzzy finding manually myself within sesh as like a feature, then that goes away because there's less need to like do string interpolation, because I would be able to actually use the identifiers that are running behind the scenes. But we're not quite there yet. So I'm gonna commit this. Do I need any of this? Yeah. So feature add startup command. That's it. We did it. Chat, we're done. In an hour, we did the whole feature. Now, we probably could add testing. Would probably be a good idea. I was raving about testing earlier, right? So I haven't done a crazy amount of unit tests on the connection specific package. I've done a lot of the basics. There's a very good chance that we've actually maybe broken a test because we've added dependencies. So there's probably some things I'm going to have to do. Fail. Yeah, we've already got test failure. All right, so that is because we rearranged some of the dependencies. So let's just start with namer test. Let's just start there. So let's do this. Go away. All right, so we'll just start fixing these. Namer test. We have duplicate tests. Convert tests. Does this just go away? Am I even using this anymore? Namer uses it. No, this is the namer test. I don't want to do that. I want namer convert test. Test valid converting. Oh, we have two. So the namer test isn't needed because I already am validating it. Wait, is this the only test? No. Got it. So that's a duplicate test. Okay. So these should test. Oh boy. I get different names than I expect. Fun. I'll have to mess with this a bit more, I think. This might be the boring part. I might do this in the morning before work, so you guys don't have to watch me. Unless you want to see me debug tests. So we'll do config test on lister. And we're going to have a variable problem. So we added startup. And we're going to mock startup. And that won't exist because I need to run mockery to generate a new file for startup. And then I need mock startup is going to be startup. Boom. And that should be a comma. Too many arguments. Config home Tmux Zoxide. Oh, I think I rearranged them. All right, got it. All right. So that's that. Tmux test on lister is going to be similar, or is this one actually failing? Oh, yeah, duh. Okay, let's rerun this. So in some cases, mockery wasn't set up, and so mockery is going to crap out because, well, it just doesn't know some things exist. All right, so now we have a lot less. Connector, that sounds right. So let's do that. This feels better. So connector config tests. So this changed. We want startup. So this will be startup, mock startup. And mock startup will be here. There we go. No. There we go. So that's that. Config test, connector, Tmux test. It's going to be the same thing. So we're going to mock startup with that. And then we're going to add it to. This is where I think inlay hits is useful. So that's what I want to say, because look, this gray text is called inlay hints. So this is the LSP telling me what it's expecting on that argument. So we can see here it says mock Tmux, and it thinks it should be startup. So we should just say mock, and it sees right there, startup shows itself up already, and we know that that's right, and it should fix our test. So pretty cool. Pass. Okay, and then we did get this, our namer test. If that's the only thing, then that's fine with me. Let's just go to it. So we'll do namer test, and we'll just run all the tests. So we can see here, our assertion failed. Yeah, it returns an error. It returns an error. It returns neovim based off of the path wrap base. So when we call this, I would have expected this to be why didn't it work? So returns based on non-get thing. Yeah, that's right. There's something in my name that isn't passing. So dir name is what should be wrapped. Base should come from that. Base is the string returned. So then the name that's returned, I shouldn't be getting an error unless I wrote an error. Get show common dir, show top level dir. Oh, it's going to return this error? I need it to not return an error. Because on the strategies, when it errors, I just swallow it. And then on the get name, show top level, we swallow this as well. We just ignore it. And then I return null. And then on the dir name, I shouldn't have gotten any errors, but why would it return an empty string? So it never even reaches that, is my guess. It's probably could not determine path from there. Yeah. It's going to be my guess that this is what's failing. What is this? Convert to raw string literal. Fine. All right. What does this say? Oh, well, it's just a warning. Let's go ahead and test it again. What? Tests not associated? That's wrong. All right, this is where we actually want to add breakpoints. So in our code, namer, we want to go through the strategies one by one, get to the bottom, add my breakpoints, add my breakpoints. So error should be nil, but maybe it's coming back as some other. So now I should be able to run this. Oh, there we go. So it's returning nil because of which strategy? It is finding an error. Error is nil? Now I'm confused. Error. Data error. Not a repository or any of the parent. Yeah. No, I'm not supposed to throw an error here. It's not a Git repository or any of the parent is what we do expect. Right. So what is it, this one? This one, I expect it to happen. So if I expect this error, why is it catching it on the name function? So error should be like that. Do I need to assign it? Yes, I do. It's probably that. All right. So let's try again. Hey, okay. So let's just add go test. Sweet, no exit code. All right, so then that is all our tests passing. Let's take a look at sesh GitHub issues. So you can see waiting for V2, waiting for V2, waiting for V2. So I've been doing that. I should have an actual ticket for this, but I don't think I've been super complete with the feature set. One thing that I know probably needs done is the clone command. I don't know how many people are leveraging it, but I don't know if it would be super missed if I didn't launch it in the beta. So maybe we'll do a beta. How do if I release a beta, so let's look at code and tags. If I was to ask people to start testing this, do I do a pre-release and people would I feel like I would do a pre-release, draft a new release, tag pre-release, non-production ready. Yes. So now if I was to do this, I could create a v2.0 alpha beta 1. What's the best way to define a beta GitHub release tag? Dash beta, yeah. What do you guys think? Yeah, this one seems fine. Automatically add markdown. Okay, so sesh v2 first beta sesh has been completely rewritten over the last 6 months or so. When did we start? After the last few months, I'll say. All right. So simplified, predictable, and organized logic, more scalable, automated mock package mocks using mockery. Features completed so far. So far, recent commits. Yeah. We've done sesh list, sesh connect. What else have we done? CLI. Yeah, so clone isn't at, look at this action. It's nothing's there. So we want sesh clone and icon supports. What's changed? Dropped. Actually, I should probably test that today. We were talking about it earlier. Dropped startup script in favor of startup command. So basically, if we go back to here and we do a sesh config, sesh config. Look, it worked. It worked. I love it. All right, so we have our script. So this, let's just do a diff. So this goes away, and it becomes startup command. This should work. So if I do command, and I was to launch joshradesky.com, oh, hold on. Why is it not showing up as a script? It needs to be named. Name. Something like this. Jam site. Jam. Hold on. What is happening? So this guy, jam site. Unknown command exists but is not an executable file. So let's go to it. Scripts, sesh, scripts, sesh. Damn. Ah, so let's say note. You'll need to make sure your script files are executable. This is a silly, to me, this was sort of a silly complication of what's going on here. And in fact, there's other Tmux tools. Shout out to Typecraft. He's working on one. What's his called? His is called Tmux shell schmux, I think is maybe what he called it. I was proposing to him that he could change the way that it works so that you could just call a function and it would use the session that you give it to execute the commands that he has in his scripting file. It's just based off of Bash, which is pretty cool. So let's try this again. Jam site. Really? So path startup command. What is happening? it doesn't want to show this. Why not? Why is it missing from here? So it shows up there. Oh, hold on. If I go to this sesh, yeah, this is already here. I would want this to be first. Sesh dev list dash C for configurations. So it's starting at home. Wait, hold on. Is it sorting it? What is this? Home is way down here. There's something going on funky. Jam site. That's the path. That's the startup command. Can I remove that? What is happening? Why would I not have this? That's just straight up wrong. So my only thought now, config sesh, is that this sesh toml is different. What is happening? Is it like, let's go to home. Yeah, it's like cached. What could be causing this? Why is my config file not being honored? All the files. Is it going to be the same? It is the same. Jam site, it's right there. Oh boy. Well, there's the first bug, isn't it? But hold on. If I go to the old one, list dash C, jam sites first. And then on my sesh v2 lister, it pulls the sesh configs. Yep, and then it takes the config key, creates an ordered index. Oh, that could be part of it. The config key is config:\thing. We have our ordered index. Then we have our path that's expanded. And then we have our config session, and then the directory. And then when we list it, where? We list it in the sesh CLI on the list command. We do a list passing config, and then we print by the directory name. And there's an index that doesn't match. This will be interesting. I'll have to probably spend some more time with it. But this was an interesting start. I had fun doing this. I think I'm gonna not be doing all of that tonight. There wasn't not very many people here. Seems like the more often I stream, the more likely there's more people here. So for those that were hanging out today, thanks for being a part of this, and I hope you had fun coding along with me and doing some Go development, getting some tests to pass, getting some new features shipped, and I will release this beta, and I'll let people start giving me some feedback, make sure that things are good before I ship them. So be on the lookout on the Discord, and or follow the releases on GitHub. That's another great way to know when I'm releasing things. And hope you guys have a good night or day or wherever you are. And I'll see you next week.